I hit record. So we're recording now.
All right.
Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of When Records Ruled, the podcast where we share a love of rock music and pop culture from the 70s and 80s and take a few B-side tracks down memory lane along the way. So grab those liner notes and crack open that box of grape/strawberry nerds because it's time to hit the play button. I'm your host, David Norris, and joining me on this flashback musical road trip are my good friends Brian Strom and Lance Schwartz. How are you guys doing?
I'm ready to talk about the mighty, or we're not saying it yet.
No, not quite.
Okay.
Almost there.
All
Almost
right.
there.
All good.
Good.
Yep.
How do you feel about nerds?
I love those.
We are nerds, man.
Yeah.
And so we love nerds.
We love ourselves.
You are what you eat.
Yeah, it's very.
So this is the final episode in our short series of talking about each of our very first albums. In today's episode, we'll be taking a look at my first album, which is the self-titled debut by the mighty Van Halen. Echoed across the room. We'll hear what was happening around the time of the album's release, wrap it up with a personal rating of the album, and then we'll end the show with our Remember When segment. So to get us started, Lance is going to give us some details about the album.
Yes, I am. Good stuff here tonight. So Van Halen's debut album was released on February 10th, 1978. It was a major success. Peaked at number 19 on the U.S. Billboard 200 chart, sold more than 10 million copies in the United States. Went gold first in 78, then went platinum just a few months later. Well, that was, May 24th, 78. Went platinum on October 10th, 78. Less than a year later, the album sold more than 1 million copies in the U.S. alone, meaning the album was already a huge success, obviously.
Nice.
So then, this is the interesting part. On October 22nd, 84, the album was certified 5 times multi-platinum, then went to 6 times multi-platinum in 89, February of 89, and then went 7 times multi-platinum in 93. So talk about staying power.
Wow.
Keep selling.
Yep.
It helps that they were active for that long. Even with a different singer, it was still selling
Yeah, for sure.
old albums.
And then 8 times multi-platinum in 1996. So big stuff for a big album with a lot of big tunes. Yeah, obviously.
And big personalities.
Huge personalities, yes.
We'll get into that.
So that's what I've got as background.
Awesome. So for an even better frame of reference, Brian has some information and fun facts on what was happening around the time the album was released.
All right. Some of the top bands of the time, and at least one of these popped up one of our previous episodes. Bee Gees. This is 1978, February. Earth, Wind, and Fire. Rolling Stones.
Yes.
Billy Joel. Bob Seger. And the Cars.
Love them all.
Yeah. Some of the top songs, number 3 of the week of February 10th, 1978 was Love is Thicker Than Water by
Andy Gibb.
Yes.
And number 2, Short People.
Ain't Got No Reason?
To Live. Paul Newman.
Randy Newman.
Randy.
Paul
Newman.
Paul's
Yeah.
his brother, that actor, race car driver.
That's right. Who makes good dressing?
Yes.
Yes.
And then number 1, Staying Alive by the Bee Gees.
Yeah,
Wow.
of course.
So definitely the age of disco.
Yes. Some of the top shows, Happy Days,
Yes.
All in the Family,
Oh, yeah.
Charlie's Angels, Little House on the Prairie, and MASH.
Pretty much all in syndication right now. And
Yes,
still
going
watching 'em.
strong.
Some of those was a little late for me to be watching, I think, at the time.
Yeah, right.
Charlie's Angels, I remember coming on like, oh, it's bedtime. I can remember seeing like the intro and then
Yep.
boom. Same with MASH, I think, for a little bit too. Maybe.
I've talked to my mom about that before. It's like, why did you make us go to bed so early?
You know, that was during those types of shows. And then the other terrible thing was Monday Night Football, where you could watch like the first quarter.
Right.
It's like, come on.
Well, see, It was a little easier for me because I was on the West Coast.
Yes,
so we had the games earlier.
Yeah.
But I remember, having to go to bed at like, say, 8:45. And it's like, what? I can't finish the show?
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Top movies from the time. Grease, Superman, National Lampoon's Animal House, and Every Which Way But Loose.
Wow.
Right. Clint Eastwood?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Top toys. Mattel Electronic Football.
Yes. Had that.
Yeah. And I want to say at the time that was selling for like $29.
Big money.
Yeah, that was a lot of money for that. For lines.
Yeah, right.
Lines and beeps.
I have a working version of that.
You
I
still
do
have
too.
it?
I do.
Yeah.
My brother had that one. I had the 2 versions. It was green, had a little more you could pass.
Yeah, I have the 2.
So that was the next one.
We had the head-to-head.
I also have the baseball one too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Milton Bradley's Simon.
Yep.
Hungry Hungry Hippo.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's that old.
Yep.
Awesome.
And Slinkies. So
Slinkies
tried
are,
and true.
speaking of staying power,
Yeah, no kidding.
they probably came out in like the 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a weird kind of morphing into the plastic ones for the longest time.
that's
and you
right.
couldn't even find a metal one.
Yeah.
There was a time a little while ago I wanted to find one.
Was
for
that
one of
during the
kids.
war when they were trying to
Yeah. I was trying to find a metal one and it was just about impossible. It was probably more than a decade ago for one of my kids, but man, you couldn't even find a metal one.
I want to know how they got them to work so well in the commercials.
You never got them to do like the
they were
stairs?
I
weighted.
did, but not like they did
Come on,
on
it's
this.
editing, Brian.
They were weighted. I think they put little.
There was something because those things are step.
Yep.
You know, I could get 1.5 or something, and then it would collapse. And I don't know.
Yeah. I had a friend who had like like walk into a main level, but they had a really long staircase to go up to their second level.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a really long staircase to like throw them down.
And you could do it?
We could about half of it before
Wow.
I would mess up.
Well,
Yeah.
you were better than
Yeah.
I was, I guess.
Until we got bored with that and went back to Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah. All right.
So. All right, gents. It's time to dive her down into the debut album by Van Halen. All right. Since this was my first album, I'll give you some backstory about hearing it for the first time at a neighbor kid's house. I'm maybe around 9, 10. So this is maybe a 79 or 80. You know, back when listening to whatever was on the radio, 40 disco, like we mentioned, some soft rock. My mom played a lot of records in the house. So it was like Kenny Rogers, Johnny Cash, Anne Marie, Johnny Horton, that kind of thing. I had a classmate, good stuff, right?
Johnny Horton.
Johnny Horton.
Who's Johnny Horton?
Oh, look him
I don't
up.
know Johnny Horton.
Look him up.
There's not many artists that I don't know. So
had a classmate, and this was a house across the street, and this house rotated families like every maybe 5 years or so. So he wasn't there very long. Kind of knew him, and he invited me over. And I remember being over there listening to some music one time in his bedroom. We were doing some lip syncing to the Knack's My Sharona. And I had brought over my like plastic guitar with the little nylon strings I'd got for Christmas at some point. So we were having a great time with lip syncing, had some like box drums and stuff. So I remember that we were both kind of into music to a certain extent, both like music. And we went downstairs in their house, and he had his parents or his older brother had a giant stereo system, all the components. Tall speakers is almost as tall as I was. Mm-hmm. So I was like really in awe of this stereo system compared to probably just a little transistor radio we had at home or cassette players.
Right.
And so he put this album on, and even looking at the album, we'll talk about the cover in a little bit too, but this was something I had never seen. And even just the album itself, it was giving me like a little heebie-jeebies just because it looked, just menacing, right?
Little angry,
yeah. I mean, just the look of, Eddie almost screaming at you, holding his guitar in this red light, almost evil looking.
Like flames coming off the guitar.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
These flames were coming. And I do remember on Alex's drum set, which is right below Eddie's photo, he's all in red light too. And I thought that was flames. And I thought, man.
Because you can't even see his face. It's just so obscured. And
and it literally like flames are like green flames licking off of Michael Anthony's bass. And
he almost looks devilish on there. Anthony does.
So it was like a really weird vibe from the album cover.
Yeah.
And then he starts playing the album. And Running with the Devil comes on. And I do remember the feeling.
And your worst fears were realized.
Oh, man. It was just like, what is this haunting sound? But he just probably had it cranked up because, I'm not even sure if his parents were home when we were listening to this. And we're just, going through the first couple of songs. And I just remember thinking like, oh, man, this is almost turning my stomach in knots because it was just so different and aggressive than anything else that I was listening to at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like almost feeling a little ill. And I'm thinking to myself like, man, do I even like this? Exactly. Yeah. Do I like this? And after a while I'm like, yeah, I do like this. I need a copy of this. And I remember going back to my house after we were listening to it a little bit and grabbing an old cassette recorder. And it's just like the little portable one. You pop a cassette and it's got a speaker built in and a microphone. And we held it up to one speaker, while we're held it. Didn't even think of setting it down on something, anywhere there, and recorded a few songs. I looked for that tape. I don't have the tape anymore, unfortunately, because that would have been super awesome to have. Hear what it sounded like. And this is before we even realized like they split guitar and bass into separate speakers. So I have no idea.
Hope you had the right side.
I know. Well, the side I wanted was probably the guitar side. Yeah. So I don't actually remember buying this album. But it was sometime after that I'm sure, at the store, and like, hey, I see this and recognize the album cover. Got to have it. Got to play it on my portable cassette recorder. And, I could plug some headphones into if we had them.
You were probably afraid when you were buying it too. So you mentally blocked out that traumatic experience.
Probably. Yeah. So that's my story. That whole experience just made more of an emotional impact on the experience of listening to it for the first time than remember buying it from the store.
Yeah.
So when do you guys each remember hearing this album? Because I know Brian, for our listeners, Brian's the biggest Van Halen fan I know, and he has probably more information than we're going to be able to fit in an hour here, even just about this one album.
Yeah, listening to this album, I can't put a finger on exactly when. I know my brother had the cassette, so it was probably early 80s when I first had listened to it. And I remember hearing a lot of the songs on the radio, maybe not always knowing who it was. So when I did listen to the cassette, my brother's cassette for the first time, I was like, oh, this is Van Halen. Oh, this is Van Halen too. Oh, this is Van Halen. So I didn't have an experience like you did. That's pretty cool. Lance? I'm wondering, do you remember when this came out?
Yeah.
Because Lance is a bit older.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dave, I have a similar story, but a little bit different. I was, 78, 14.
Oh, that's good math.
And I was over at my cousin's house. We would go to my cousin's, aunt and uncle's, probably every 3-4 months. And the parents would hang out and visit, and my cousin and I would retreat into his bedroom with his Kenwood stereo system and Kenwood amp and
Pioneer speakers.
Pioneer speakers, probably Pioneer turntable. And he had great collection. I was envious of his record collection. I had just started, a couple years prior, buying that Boston album. And he had a copy of Van Halen. He put it on, and I had a similar reaction. It's like, whoa, what is this? I've never heard anything like it. You hear Eruption, and there was never anything like it before that. And, we sat and listened to that 2-3 times that night, probably annoying our parents, my aunt and uncle, because he had a nice stereo.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long after that I purchased Van Halen. And, all the guys on the block want to come over and listen. And then we all got into Van Halen, and we couldn't wait for 2 to come out, and then Women and Children first. And you're like, whoa, every album got a little better, we thought.
Yeah.
Until Diver Down came out. That was a little bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, there's a whole big story on that one, which is pretty interesting. But
maybe if we have time, we can talk about that. But
we won't.
We won't, yeah. But it was, definitely a moving experience. And it was, instant. This is going to be big. I mean, you could tell this is going to be big.
Well, when this came out, disco was reigning, punk was in. There wasn't anything like this.
No.
You had your prog rock bands, and this was very different.
So the story is that Eddie was visiting with somebody at a party and let him know that they were recording one of the songs.
There was quite a time period between the time they were signed and recorded and the time it was released by a number of months. And Eddie had a copy of this, and he liked to play stuff for friends of his. And one of his friends he played it for, who was in another band. Can't remember the name.
That's what I was trying to remember as I was talking.
Or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I've heard of that band.
So he was. But did he play a copy of "You Really Got Me" for him, or just told him? Okay.
No, he probably played him some other songs, and this guy hears the song, and he's like, "Ooh, we got to record this." So he runs back to his producer and said, "We got to do this song," and so they're recording the same song. Well, now Ted Templeman finds out that Eddie's been
producer of this album.
The producer has been sharing this with other people and realized that we got to get this out before this other band does.
And so they just rushed the single.
They rushed the single.
Necessarily the album.
So, so You Really Got Me came out earlier than they had planned.
Okay.
It was, I believe, planned on being the first single. Ted Templeman was always the guy who said, if you re-record a song, you're already halfway there. So he wanted to do something that people would recognize right away to introduce Van Halen.
A real quick segue here. I had a quote from the Kinks' Dave Davies. He claimed he disliked Van Halen's rendition of the song, saying, "Good art isn't always about having the comfiest technique." I shouldn't encourage him, but I'm sure Eddie Van Halen played better when he was drunk. He said he also told of how a concert goer approached him after a live show and congratulated him on performing, quote, "a great cover of the Van Halen song."
That's funny.
Like the ultimate slap in the face.
Oh, is that ever?
I have a Kinks Greatest Hits, and they have this song on there live, and they actually do like a guitar solo before going into the thing. So it's kind of like an eruption kind of thing, and then playing it, which I thought was, maybe you're catering to the crowds now.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. I mean, it stood up on its own. I thought there's a lot of Kinks songs that's just
rock. Yeah.
So is it true what I read that this album was mostly recorded live?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
In 3 weeks?
Yep. And if you listen to it, you can tell because you can hear there's very few overdubs on it. So you can hear Eddie playing his rhythm and everything and then just going right into a guitar solo. So it's just...
Yeah, I was wondering about overdubs too because it was sort of uncommon not to have overdubs on rock records. So as I listened through this, I think Jamie's Crying might be the only one.
There's 4.
There's 4?
Yep. Well, according to the data I
definitely
found.
The beginning of Jamie's Crying, there's some overdub because there's a lead with the rhythm going.
Yep.
What else is there?
They didn't really know any other way. It's like we play live.
Yeah.
They've done 2 demos. And that's just how they did it.
The 4 songs are Running with the Devil, Jamie's Crying, Feel Your Love Tonight, and Ice Cream Man contain guitar overdubs, according to the data I found. So the original demos that were created when Gene Simmons found them and had them create some demos.
Yeah,
talk about
that more. Talk about that more, Gene Simmons.
Because I've heard those too, and they contain a lot of overdubbing, and they didn't sound anything like the normal Van Halen because Eddie would fill in stuff on his own because he was just the one guitar player, and that was kind of their style live. And when they tried to reproduce that,
I don't know that there is that much overdubbing on that demo.
On that demo,
I don't think so. I'd have to go listen to it again. It sounded weird, but yeah, I mean, it sounds different.
Yeah,
but Yeah, I'm going to read this. This was Gene Simmons describing the night he discovered Van Halen.
Yeah.
And it's true?
This is true.
Because you never know with Simmons, right?
Simmons always speaks the truth.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
But okay.
The scary thought that is.
I will read this to you, and you tell me
if it's true.
It's probably legit.
Okay.
All right. So Simmons recalls that fateful evening when the young and hungry Pasadena band's soon-to-be legendary live show blew him away. Simmons initially assumed that the full flurry of stuff and the classical melodies that he heard from the Starwood stage were created by multiple guitarists, and he was amazed when he realized that it was all the work of Eddie Van Halen. I ran to the front of the fence from the top floor so I could see everyone underneath us, and there were only 4 guys on stage. He marveled. One guy, David Lee Roth, had his shirt off, defying gravity, jumping up and down. Alex, giant drums, playing double kick. The bass player, Michael Anthony, had the highest voice I've ever heard, real pure like a banshee. And then the guitar player. I didn't even know their names or anything. He steps up and starts doing stuff and tapping, which I had never seen before. I had never heard a guitarist, certainly a rock guitar player, do anything like that. And he was playing not only fast and furious, but sometimes in harmony with his tapping. I was just astonished. I was waiting for them backstage to meet them after the 3rd song.
Wow.
So that's his description. And then he says, basically the short story is I offered to fly them to New York, put them up in a hotel, take them to Electric Lady Studios, Jimi Hendrix.
Yep.
And record a demo. And that's what I did. I signed them to my company, Man of 1,000 Faces.
And how long after that did he offer a spot and kiss to Eddie?
That was later, and that's a questionable story.
Yeah.
So, he went and recorded these demos with him. He brings these demos to his record company, which is Casablanca. Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
They said no one would be interested in this. These guys will never get signed. And so Gene Simmons says, here you guys go. Here's the demo. Do whatever you want. Shop it around. Rips up the contract. I'm out of this. You guys do whatever you want. You have my blessing.
Wow. No one would sign them.
Now, this is 1976. So,
yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's not disco. It's not going to sell right now.
Right.
It's not easy listening.
And like I said, there wasn't anything like this out there.
Yeah.
So that was how that went down.
I got another couple quotes that I thought were worth sharing too here. This is after the album came out, so this is commenting on the album from a Village Voice album critic, Robert Christgau, I think is how you pronounce his name maybe, said, for some reason, Warners want us to know that this is the biggest bar band in the San Fernando Valley. The term becomes honorific when the music belongs in a bar. This music belongs on an aircraft carrier.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of high praise, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And conversely to that was a Rolling Stone critic, Charles Young, in May 78. He said, mark my words, in 3 years Van Halen is going to be fat and self-indulgent and disgusting, and they'll follow Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin right into the toilet. In the meantime, they are likely to be a big deal.
Who said that?
Charles Young from Rolling Stone.
How long did he last at Rolling Stone after that?
Maybe he was describing himself in 3 years.
Yeah, man.
Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin are going in the toilet?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So Ted Templeman, this is probably a year later, discovers them playing it at the Starwood, I believe, on a rainy night. But it was like midweek. There's a handful of people at the show, and he said they just put on a show like they were playing for a stadium. Gene Simmons actually went out to find a band to sign, and there was another band called The Boys, who was George Lynch, later of Dokken.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the bands he was going to see. And but he saw Van Halen first, and I don't think he bothered to see The Boys.
Yeah. I mean, that's a testament to their work ethic, I think, too. Instead of kind of phoning it in when there's only 50 people there, they're playing like there's 50,000. Mm-hmm.
And they were playing, they were together, this lineup of the band together for 4 years, playing 5-6 nights a week, just 4 hours a night,
grind,
4 sets. So by the time they got to record this album, they could just record it live. They knew the stuff frontwards, backwards, and
I read somewhere that Michael Anthony, I think, said that's basically what we had. This was our show, is what we put on the album. We didn't have much else.
Yeah. They had, I think with Ted Templeman, the demo they had 25 songs. They did, I would say 6 of those songs are on the album. And the rest of the songs ended up on the next 2-3 albums.
Really?
Yep. And even later, bits of songs, maybe just a little guitar piece, a solo or something would end up in songs later on. Mm-hmm. Even into the Sammy Hagar years, something would pop up. Or they'd change the lyrics on something, or they'd use a lyric to another song. So they used a lot of what they had on those demos.
Big rock bands, the guitarist is always super important. But I was wondering, is there any other band that the guitar or guitarist is more important to the band than Van Halen?
Yeah,
that's a great question.
I mean, there might be, but it's right up there.
So the question is there Van Halen without David Lee Roth? Is there David Lee Roth without Van Halen?
Yeah, that's a good question too.
I think
there was.
I think they complemented each other very well.
Yeah.
And they both needed each other.
Yeah, for sure.
As much as they didn't get along all the time.
Right. They did not. David Lee Roth was the ringleader. He was the showman. He told the guys how to dress. He told the guys, what you should be doing on stage. You should do this in your solo. It was all visual to him. And you'll see that, through their whole careers. And it all started with, because Eddie and Alex, they would be just wearing jeans and a t-shirt and just play their stuff. But
if it was left to them,
they would have looked like Black Sabbath or something.
And they didn't really care. They just wanted to play.
They didn't care. They liked playing music.
They didn't care about the show aspect necessarily.
Yep. So he was the marketing guy. He was the guy. He created the posters that they were running around town, putting on cars and telephone poles and all that stuff. It was all David Lee Roth.
Wow. I think he helped Eddie with some of the iconic stage jumps and that sort of stuff.
Could be.
It'd be interesting to know.
Yeah.
Or he just followed suit because Dave probably was already doing it. And he's like, well, you're not going to one-up me. I bet I can jump and play guitar.
Yeah.
I should try it.
I mean, he definitely had some signature moves on stage. Eddie did.
The Flying Eddies.
Yep. The Flying Eddies.
Yep. And the grin.
Yeah, you wonder.
He was
just smile.
He was
Everybody will love you.
That was kind of the difference of a lot of those kind of more angry groups. They looked like they were having fun.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And
after you see a Van Halen show, especially in the early years, it's hard to see anybody else because nothing really compared to the live show and just, I mean, they were running all over that stage the whole show. It's just amazing.
I don't know how they would have kept that up doing 4 sets a night, 5 days a week. How much energy that would have taken out
Although
of you.
At that time they were playing on a little stage.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. But I mean, as much as they were just moving around in their spaces though, too.
Right. Yeah.
Because all of them, well, Alex, I mean, obviously doesn't move, but he's moving while he's playing drums. But the other 3 of them are just constantly in motion.
Yeah.
So I've seen some of the earlier live footage and you're just like, these guys are just nonstop.
Right.
And it's exciting to watch because you look at anybody else, the rock musicians of the time or whoever else was performing, and they're mainly just standing in one place behind a microphone.
They ruined a lot of future concerts for me that I watched by other bands. It's like, these guys didn't even move. What, he's just going to stand there the whole time? Yeah. What is this? Songs sound good, but man, just going to stand there. Okay.
Walk around at least.
Yeah, do something.
One more fun fact here that I came across that I thought was interesting. Prince, who could be a blazing guitar hero among his many other talents too, released his debut album in April of the same year.
Wow. Interesting.
So he's been recording and releasing stuff since then too. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't have put the two together because his popularity came much later. You know, I think Van Halen had a pretty big jump start.
Unless you grew up in Minneapolis.
Well,
like
true. Yeah. True.
Right. Yeah.
Which we did not. Brian and I did not.
We did not.
But yeah, you're right. The massive appeal that Prince had was probably not till well into the 1999 album.
Yes.
And then just went through the roof.
Right.
Which is, I think, the only Prince album I have on vinyl.
Double album, right?
It is.
Yep.
All right. Let's get into talking about some of the tracks. We probably won't cover all of them, but we can just start with Running with the Devil. Number 2, Dutch mega charts. I know. I thought that was interesting.
They're Dutch. So
they're Dutch. So they hit big on the Dutch charts, which I thought, that makes sense.
Yeah. So the interesting on this song, the horns in the beginning.
Yes.
That was from their live show. They actually took out what's wrong with you, Lance?
Whoa, I learned something. That's horns?
They're car horns.
So what did you think it was before?
I thought it was Eddie's guitar.
Really?
I thought it was some sort of effect.
Yeah.
Oh, I never even thought of that, but I could see how people could think that too. I always thought it was a train horn.
Yeah.
Because it's the multiple horns. Go ahead and finish the story.
So they took the horns out of their cars and hooked a number of different horns up. They had 2 car batteries they'd have on stage, and they had a pedal or a switch that they could flip that on for that song.
I'm blown away.
And they didn't. So the Gene Simmons demos, they had a song called House of Pain, and as that song went out, they had the horns kick in and then lead into Running with the Devil. I'm thinking they must have done some recording in LA with Gene Simmons and then also in New York, because there's no way these guys are dragging their horns out to New York to do this. So I'm wondering if that was that. But then with the Warner Brother demos with Ted Templeman, this horn is not in the song. So then when they record the album, now it's back in. So how that happened, I don't know. And then Ted Templeman, he slowed it down a little bit. You can hear it. Mm-hmm. And before the bass kicks in, yeah.
Which I think is just a way to rev up that song and just kick you right into it.
Yeah.
I just thought it was so cool.
Yeah.
Especially the first, I don't exactly remember the first time hearing it, but I just kind of remember that feeling though of just like, wow, this is so unusual, but it's so cool.
Yeah. Yep.
At the same time.
Yep.
It felt super thick and heavy.
Yes.
That was the difference for me. I think it's just like bone crushingly heavy.
Especially live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When those lows can go so low and just rumble your chest.
Yep. I don't know. I didn't really know what this song was about, so I looked up kind of some interpretations, and maybe Brian has some more information too. But the lyrics "Running with the Devil" are usually interpreted as being a reference to freedom. So in the song, freedom is portrayed as a lack of social ties and living in the present. So they're
that's trippy and heady.
Yeah, right.
Never really thought about that.
I never really thought about it either. What do you mean by that? So
thought it was Saturday night partying with the boys. We're going to be running with the devil tonight. I'm learning a lot today.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So the simple lifestyle is not as simple as it appears, I guess.
Right. Another interesting fact on this, when they released the Greatest Hits album in 96, they had this on there. They flipped the guitar solos. So the initial solo ended up on the second part and the second part on the first part. So I remember buying that.
So they're not exactly the same.
No,
because
this was a mistake. It was a mistake. So the first printings of the Best of Volume 1, it's there's a mistake in the mix with that one.
Really?
Yeah. So I remember the first time I listened, I put it on, I was like, whoa, wait a minute, where are we? This is not right. That's the second solo. What's going on here? So
you've got that the misprint, or
I do have that, yeah.
Cool.
If you listen to it, you'd be thrown off.
How many pressings did they get through?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of them. Yeah. I mean, because if they're releasing the greatest hits, they probably
96. So it's CD mostly. Probably.
CDs, yep.
Yeah.
So that's the collector item.
Believe I have that at home, so I'll have to give that a listen again.
Check it out.
See if you have it.
I usually just put vinyl on. Right, guys?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's the name of the show.
All right, we can go into the next song, Eruption.
This song was not intended to be on the album. Eddie was just warming up, getting ready for a solo for a concert that night. And Ted Templeman was walking by and he says, "Whoa, what was that?" "Oh, just a little something I'm warming up with." He's like, "We got to record that." And Don Landy is in the other room. He's like, "Are you ready?" He's like, "Yeah." Eddie played it. I think he played it twice. And that was it. And this all happened within probably like 10 minutes. And
it's like quick grab, like, oh, we got to get that on.
We got to get this, yeah.
Get it down.
And
quick.
Yeah. And to this day, well, Eddie claimed that he made a mistake in it.
I found that note too. Said I didn't even play it right. This is Eddie. This is a quote. I don't know how accurate it is, but I didn't even play it right. There's a mistake at the top of end of it. To this day, whenever I hear it, I always think, man, I could have played it better.
Yeah.
Which sounds very Eddie.
Right.
Because I think in some of the later albums, when they were recording, I remember reading something about them saying, "That was great, Ed." And after he played some solo on some song, he's like, "It was great, Ed. I don't think you can play it better than that." So he proceeded to play another one and probably did it better than that previous take.
Yep.
So don't goad him, I guess.
I guess you can do it better.
Yes.
So if he was just noodling around and it made the album, early concerts, did he play Eruption note for note, or what happened?
Probably it was a mix of that and some other stuff. So he probably had parts of it, and that was kind of a thing that he did
for his solo time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I suppose that was the thing they might have been doing already before they recorded anything. Before recording this album, like during their show, they would have had some solo parts.
Right.
For even a break.
Yep.
Just a break in the, give the rest of the guys a break during their 4 set night.
But it was just his solo. I mean, it wasn't called Eruption. It wasn't anything. That was all a title given later. But
you know who named it at all?
I don't.
As iconic of a tune that it is, it seems like it'd be something that would be a set list staple, after the album was out.
It was.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. I'm sure he played that every single night for the rest of his life.
Seen any video of, because I've seen him, we've seen him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we all the Van Halen shows I've been to were either with one of you or both of you.
Mm-hmm.
But they were, one DLR, but that was the reunion.
Yep.
Two DLRs, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, he would play snippets of it.
Yep. He would incorporate a lot of his instrumental stuff, especially from the first handful of albums. Mm-hmm. And so he actually kind of created a song in itself with a combination of all those.
Yeah.
But yeah, Eruption was always in there.
Yeah.
He might play part of it, go away from it, come back to it, and
just teasing the audience.
And
I remember that.
The audience knew exactly what was happening.
Yep. Yep. If you watch Live Without a Net, same thing.
Yep.
When did you first see Van Halen, Brian?
In 1986. So
86?
that was with Sammy Hagar.
Yeah.
Yep.
On the
that's 5150. Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
So they had a big resurgence then.
Yeah, that was huge. I mean, the night I saw them, this was the last, the end of their tour, and this was in San Francisco, and they sold out 4 shows for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Chuck Klosterman of Vulture.com named it the best Van Halen song, noting, "If you love Van Halen, this is what you love, and you can listen to it 1,000 times without diminishing returns."
Yeah.
Like, that's very true.
This song was kind of a template for what everybody after Eddie Van Halen did or aspired to do.
Yeah. This is kind of the template sound for most, if not all, hair bands going forward.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, at the time, nobody knew how he did it. How in the world is he making these sounds?
Well, at one point, I know you remember, I remember talking to you about this and learning, like, he used to turn around and hide tapping from the audience. So for the longest time, so nobody could see him doing it.
Yep.
To copy it.
Correct.
So when did that change? At some point.
Probably shortly before this or after this.
Okay.
Because by then the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah. And I do remember seeing him having some guitars where he had like a little elevated little platform because he used to play the tapping
Yeah, that
flat,
was
right?
in 1984. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He actually had a patent for that.
Did he really?
Yeah.
The guitar. Wow.
Yeah. Because
Wow.
if you look at his early pictures, he had like a wooden kind of platform that he would do. And then later on, he had a plastic kind of fiberglass thing. I
remember the plastic
and
one.
that one would like click into place so he could, prop his guitar up and set it down on that.
Well,
but there's actually a patent for that.
Speaking of that, his tinkering, he created so much of the sounds himself, being the constant tinkerer guy.
Yep.
Yes. I mean, with the amps, with the guitars and pickups, I mean, his Frankenstrat, I mean, combining so many things to get the sound that he wanted, his brown sound.
He would have pickups in his guitar that didn't work just to throw people off.
Nice.
Yep.
Red herrings.
Yep.
That's so awesome.
Yep.
All right, question for you both. Since we're still on Eddie here, is he the greatest guitarist of all time?
For the era, I would have to say yes. And of all guitarists, I mean, definitely in the top 3 or 4.
And for the genre, rock genre,
Yeah.
for sure. But it's really difficult for me to say one out of, there's probably 10 that you could name. You could talk about Clapton. You mentioned Prince, Jimmy Page,
Jimi Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah. But if you think of between Jimi Hendrix, I mean, Van Halen was the next one that took it like to another step, another one who is going to influence the whole next generation.
Yep.
Amen. He's an icon.
Yep.
Is the word I guess I was looking for.
Right.
Total icon. And
but like a Jimi Hendrix, completely different style.
Yep.
So yeah.
I agree with you. It's hard to compare.
Right.
I still put him in probably the top 3 or 4.
Yep.
So much innovation just took place, not only from this album, but I mean subsequent albums, because he kept doing crazy stuff again.
Right. Yeah.
And reinventing himself and reinventing sounds and eventually coming out with his own custom built guitar that they made for him.
The sounds, you mentioned the sounds, that's really what wowed me from all the way up to probably Fair Warning. There were different sounds, different effects, things that you didn't hear on any other album.
From a guitar. It's like, how is he making these noises? I'm going to jump back a little bit here for a second, talk about Ted Templeman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he recorded Montrose in 72.
I read that.
And with Sammy Hagar. And Van Halen really liked the sound of that record. So when he signed them and he was going to produce their record, they liked what he did with Montrose. So that was kind of intentional to get that kind of sound.
They didn't necessarily seek him out, but they were like, "Oh, this guy will do us justice."
They were well aware of his work and what he did.
Because I know he produced a ton of Doobie Brothers albums.
Doobie Brothers was his big,
And as fate would have it, the lead singer of Montrose, eventually
that's
is
later one of those weird.
There was actually, after they had signed, they had done the demos, and like I said, there was this period of time between that and when they recorded the album. They were nervous about David Lee Roth. They were like, is this guy going to be able to sing? Is he going to be able to do it? And Sammy Hagar's name was actually thrown around.
Really?
Like,
that's
maybe
crazy.
we get Sammy in here to do this.
Boy.
Like, no.
But in that time
Let's wait
off,
10 years.
In that time off, David Lee Roth, he got his act together. He was getting lessons. He was prepared. So when it came time to record, he was ready. And they were happy with what he did.
I remember I got a book from Brian about the early days of Van Halen.
Van Halen Rising.
Oh, it's so good. If you haven't,
Greg Renoff.
Yes,
excellent.
It is awesome. It describes kind of how Dave started to switch gears and take things a little more seriously.
Right.
But the story is he went to some community college and signed up for voice lessons, attended all the lessons, but didn't do any of like whatever the homework, paperwork, or whatever stuff he had to do. And he was just like out. Just taking the voice lessons.
Yep.
That's all I need.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Going off to create a, $1 million album here.
Yep.
Can you see David Lee Roth walking through the halls of Pasadena Community College?
Actually, yes.
Yes.
I'm sure everyone could see him walking through the halls.
For sure.
Whistling at all the girls.
Yep.
Yeah. Making comments.
Hanging out with the next crop of welders and HVAC. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen that.
That would have been sweet, actually. Yeah. All right. Since we're kind of pressed for time, let's move on to You Really Got Me, the Kinks cover. We've all heard it.
Yep.
It's probably the most popular song on the album, I would say, or no? Eruption. Second to Eruption, maybe.
Very recognizable, I would say.
The lead in to You Really Got Me.
So for a while, I remember growing up, when they played You Really Got Me, they typically played Eruption first.
Yes.
True in your places?
Yeah, for sure.
And then I remember there was a time a little later on where that wasn't necessarily the case. It was just You Really Got Me. And then it seemed to get back to playing the Eruption with that. So anyway, the two kind of go hand in hand. It's almost like they're one song.
Yeah, for me, I agree. One song, it just is the total Eddie Van Halen experience.
Yep.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's like they're just a package deal.
Yep.
The Eruption and You Really Got Me, I kind of equate it to, it's a little bit different, but on Led Zeppelin's Heartbreaker and Living Loving Maid, I just got started playing.
Or ZZ Top.
Yeah.
Jesus Just Left Chicago, and what was the other one? I can't remember.
I was blanking on that now.
Anyway, it did exactly what Ted Templeman wanted to do. He always regretted that with Montrose, that album never took off because it never had a big single that really captured everyone's attention. And so he said, I am not going to let that happen with Van Halen. We are doing this cover, and that's going to be the first release, and that's going to get you going.
The band really wasn't happy about that, though, were they?
Eddie was not. He's like, I don't want the first thing out there is a cover.
Yeah.
It's like, I got so much of my own stuff. Why do we need to do this? But
very valid point.
Yeah, it worked. It got everyone's attention.
They trusted the producer.
Yep.
Not that maybe he didn't have a choice.
Probably didn't have a choice.
Didn't have the power that he did later on.
Right.
To probably produce and call the shots.
Right.
Yep.
Kind of changed the emotional value of You Really Got Me too, compared to the Kinks version.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, you really got me.
Yeah.
You really got me.
Yeah.
The next song, Ain't Talking About Love. So this is one of my two favorite songs on the album, I think. But I didn't know this until I read it. The guitar solo was doubled as an overdub with an electric sitar.
Yeah, that is correct.
It's like,
wow.
And then once I heard or read that, I'm like, oh, yeah, I can totally hear that now. Now I won't be able to hear it the same because I like sitar. Awesome.
Right.
And also, I love the line in the song called, it says, you know, you're semi good looking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who says that?
David Lee Roth.
David Lee Roth. You're semi good looking.
Ted Templeman was, when he was concerned about his singing ability, he loved his lyrics. So he's like, this guy's got great lyrics. So he was pulling for him.
And they're somewhat, kind of abstract to a point too.
Yeah.
I think. And that's the reason I think I like a lot of David Lee Roth's lyrics versus Sammy's, just because he is a little more in the abstract and is not like straight in your face to the point. This is a love song, or this is whatever he's talking about.
Well, he's not talking about love.
Oh, geez. I don't have a rim shot sound to go with that. Sorry.
That's a very good comparison, dichotomy between those two.
Yeah.
Yep.
This song, when Eddie wrote, he was trying to write a punk song, and this is what came out.
Really?
Yeah. He said, I guess I can't write punk.
Thank God for that.
Yes.
Yeah. You didn't need to.
Yep. I have a kind of a series of songs that I've highlighted on here. I'd say are the less popular songs, and maybe you guys can agree or disagree. This is the last of like the more popular songs on side one.
And this song I was going to mention too, probably the song played the most live of any of their songs, because they played it every single show, even with Sammy Hagar.
Really?
So this was part of that for all those years.
So this is one of the few songs that Sammy agreed to do, right? From
and there's a couple other ones that he may have done, but they would have been, like a Panama Jump, which came out 6 years later from this album. So this one, probably from day one has been played in every single concert. And also a good crowd participation song with the hey.
Yeah, totally.
So,
Yep. The last song on this side, I'm the One, almost says like a 50s doo-wop, I thought.
I had a little note that too, the doo-wop breakdown.
That's a fun part of the song.
It
totally.
is.
But weird in relation to everything else you've been hearing. It's like they're just kind of joking around in the song.
Yeah.
Like, well, let's just have some fun with this part.
Yeah. It kind of defined who they were. We're a heavy rock band, but we're fun. We're doing doo-wop in the middle of a heavy rock song. Mm-hmm. We're having fun. We're smiling. You can almost hear David Lee Roth smiling.
Oh, totally.
As he's doing it. So, yeah.
Now, that part of the song, it sounds like they layered the vocals quite a bit there.
Could be.
Because they build about 4 times, I think.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, though.
You could be right.
On the second side, we have Jamie's Crying, Atomic Punk, Feel Your Love Tonight, Little Dreamer, Ice Cream Man, and On Fire. So I think Feel Your Love Tonight, Little Dreamer, Ice Cream Man get played way more than you'd hear Atomic Punk or On Fire.
Although Little Dreamer you don't hear much.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I guess I might lump that one in there too. But so like I'm the One, Atomic Punk, Little Dreamer, On Fire. I enjoy those songs probably because I don't hear them as much.
Right. I agree with you.
Enjoy them almost more than the other ones just because I've heard them so often.
Yep.
On Fire has some interesting progressions. It's a really cool kind of I don't know what the right word is, but he the way he plays on there, it's not a pop song really. I mean, not that any of this is pop, but it's a really interesting way that he presents that song. I love that song.
And he doesn't stop. I mean,
no.
It's just
it's just
4 to the floor and he's gone.
Of all the songs on the album that are kind of the B, I really dig On Fire.
And here you're gonna get the Michael Anthony vocals. You're gonna hit those highs, and he's just an amazing background singer.
Yep, and still is.
Can we talk about the members just for a little bit? And before I don't know if you guys wanted to talk about anything on side 2, any of those other songs specifically.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Before we do that, let's just talk about band members for a second, because Michael Anthony is as much of the sound of Van Halen as Eddie and his guitar.
Mm-hmm.
His voice and bass playing, because I've heard his bass isolated on a couple songs.
Right.
And you're like, this is ridiculously awesome.
Yep.
The sound of his voice was very much a compliment to David Lee Roth in the harmonies. And Eddie, I guess, is mixed in there too.
Yep.
But I mean, he's so much of the Van Halen sound. I think if you just took him out and replaced him with some other guy who kind of sounds like him, you're like, that's not it.
I think the difference is the vocals.
Yeah.
I really do. But I disagree a little bit in saying that he's as much of the Van Halen sound as Eddie. I'd say he's 40%.
Vocally,
yes. Yeah.
Maybe that was a little too strong.
I believe his nickname was...
He helps make up the Van Halen sound. So without him, I think it's lacking a big component.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Huge component that can't be just easily replaced with someone else.
Yep.
He was nicknamed Cannon Mouth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like any lead singer, bands that have a unique lead singer are very definitive by that lead singer sometimes, Van Halen.
As well they should be. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, he's kind of helping define Van Halen by his even just backup.
Right.
You know what's interesting, though, is I've heard him take lead recently with The Circle.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think he's that great of a lead singer.
No.
But, yeah.
But he's not supposed to be a lead singer.
For sure. For sure. So we're praising his vocals, but it's definitely for that harmony that you can't get.
Yes. And that's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
And as far as his playing, I remember him saying on this album, he felt a little ripped off because Ted Templeman was so focused on Eddie's guitar playing that he was just kind of in the background and, yeah, that sounds great. Okay, now let's get back to Eddie, So he felt like he didn't get the attention, would have liked to have maybe done a little bit more, although it's hard with Eddie to shine, somewhere in there. You're looking for little spots to squeeze in, and it's tough.
It's a pretty big spotlight on that guy, and it's
Yeah, and then trying to force yourself in with Roth too as the ultimate front man.
But like you said, if you isolate his tracks, he's moving around that fretboard.
Yeah, and it's you don't really hear that with so much giant guitar coming from Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
But if you kind of listen and pay attention for it, he's quite an accomplished bassist.
Yep.
I think on some of the remasters, you hear it even more.
You do. Yep.
And that's what I really appreciate about those Van Halen remasters.
Yeah.
And there was another song, and I can't remember which one it is. If it's Feel Your Love Tonight or I'm the One, but there's clapping in it. And I remember never hearing that before, but when I got one of the remastered CDs and listened to them, I'm like, what? There's clapping in the background? So that was kind of fun.
Obviously, a terrific live band, but Dave's volatility on stage, did it take away from the Van Halen experience at all? And I've known some friends that saw them in the early 80s, and Dave was maybe 50% there.
Yeah.
Because he was known to have a bottle of Jack Daniels on stage and
forgetting the lyrics a lot.
Forgetting, exactly. And
doing his watermelon mouth. And
and voiced was not there every night. I've seen a few videos where Michael Anthony steps in and is singing lead. We were talking about him singing lead.
So what years was this?
About 82, 83.
Okay, before the breakup.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe what kind of instituted that a little bit or instigated that, I mean?
There was a lot of it, and then it kind of became part of his shtick, and that was just kind of how he did it.
Is that what we got in the Panama video with him being taken out by the cops?
Sure, right,
all that? He's just hammered and couldn't even walk.
Yeah.
So how did, and I'm looking at Brian because Brian's the Van Halen expert, how did the rest of the band react to his shtick at that point?
I'm sure it bothered them. But what are you going to do? It's David Lee Roth.
Yeah. A 50% David Lee Roth is as entertaining as most front men.
He was a showman. So maybe for what he lacked, in the singing voice, he made up for with the show.
And the crowd loved that.
I mean, to jump off the drum riser and
how high up was he?
Spread eagle.
He is up there. I don't know. I saw him do that. It was when he was solo. This was probably in the early 2000s, and he was still doing it then, and it was a pretty amazing thing. Wow. I had a camera. I actually have a picture of him.
It's part of the mystique of the band.
It is.
Those sort of shots of him up in the air.
But that goes back to him. He's kind of forcing his way into the band, really. If you read the book.
Yeah.
I mean, he's trying to weasel his way into the band, and they were just like, nah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Every time. But knowing how to put on a show, that was his game.
Yep.
Before he could even sing really well.
Right.
He knew what it took, and he had that vision.
Yep.
And he had to convince the other guys, like, yeah, I am your guy.
Yep. He got into Van Halen because they were borrowing his sound system, and I should say renting his sound system. Yeah. And they figured it would be a lot cheaper if we just have him join the band.
Well, I think he was trying to convince him of that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, you could just.
Yeah.
Can I sing a couple? I think the story was like, you can rent my sound system if I can sing a couple songs with you.
Maybe.
Something like that.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep it moving. Jamie's Crying.
This song, the only song written in the studio. So they came in with everything else. This one was written there.
So you said they had like 20 something songs they came in with?
Well,
to record?
Well, the demo that they made had 25 songs on it.
Oh, okay.
Then I'm sure Ted Templeman narrowed it down to, we're going to do these 10, 11 songs.
And then while they were in the studio, they're like, oh, we'll just fiddle around. And all of a sudden, Jamie's crying.
Came
just
up
kind
with
of
this
word out.
Yes.
Was writing a collaborative effort with Van Halen, or was it mostly Eddie?
It was mostly Eddie music. And then I think, well, that's a good question. I guess I'm not sure. I think they did work somewhat together, but it was probably Eddie coming up with stuff and then Dave putting lyrics to what that was.
And then the rhythm.
Yeah.
I should say, and then the bass and drums filled in.
Yeah, because Eddie was writing the music. I mean, they all get credit for all the songs, but it's really Eddie writing the music, Dave writing the lyrics.
Yeah.
This song, too, kind of a funny story. David Lee Roth comes in to sing the song, and it's just sounding terrible. Ted Templeman's like, what's wrong with you? What's going on? He's like, oh, I've been eating really healthy and coming in. I got a good night's rest. He's like, here's a pack of cigarettes. Go outside, smoke some cigarettes, go get yourself a burger, come back in and we'll record it. So that's what he did.
They
came back in and they recorded it, and that's what you hear.
Yeah, thinking about Roth's voice, that makes a total sense.
Yeah.
Because he did have kind of it wasn't a growl, but it was more of a smoky bluesy
a little
feel.
raspy,
yeah. And that's what defined his voice.
Yep.
The smoky gravelness.
Yep.
It's still pretty smooth, but it had a little edge on it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And then, of course, how can you not talk about Wild Thing? Tone Loc sampling the song.
Oh, yeah. How'd they feel about that?
They didn't know about it.
Until it hit the airwaves?
Yes. Eddie heard it. First thing he said is like, that sounds like Alex's drums. Yeah. So, yeah, they were not aware of that.
Wow. So was that the first time one of their songs got sampled?
As far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
It made rap pretty cool for me and a lot of other people.
It did.
It's very approachable that way.
Yep.
Right.
And speaking of rap and scratching, Atomic Punk, the guitar in the beginning where he's scraping.
What did he do?
He's scraping his pick on the strings.
That's so cool.
But does that not sound like scratching?
Yeah.
On a record?
Yeah.
What did you think about Ice Cream Man?
I really like that. I remember hearing that on the radio before I had the album, and first of all, I was shocked that it's actually Dave playing the acoustic guitar on that.
Yeah, I didn't know that for the longest time.
Yeah, I didn't either. So I was like, wow, that's kind of. And then right in the beginning when he's playing and you get that fret buzz on one of his little twang, I just love that.
Yeah,
that always stood out to me, a little thing there. But yeah, I like that. And then when the band kicks in, I mean, that was just huge. It was fun.
Very huge wall of sound when the band kicks in. And yeah. Have you heard the original blues version?
I have.
Yeah.
A number of years ago, I looked that up, and
I didn't. I'll be honest, didn't listen to it till very recently.
Yeah.
And I would guess, I can't remember the name of the artist again.
I don't know.
He probably got some good royalties out of the deal.
That was the kind of stuff that David Lee Roth was listening to. So he had, this was one that he presented to the band because, he's playing it.
John Brime?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, you can just believe whatever I say.
Yeah, that's right.
Original Ice Cream Man.
But yeah, fun song. I know my daughter Erin, that's one of her favorites.
Ice Cream Man?
Yeah. She likes
that
one.
It's pretty cool.
Just one more comment on Little Dreamer. Quick story. They wrote the song. They were doing this stuff in Dave's basement, and they had a friend come over, and they tell him, "Oh, we got this new song. It's called Little Dreamer. It's a little different than the stuff we're doing." So they play for the guy, and the guy is just like, "This song is amazing." He just loved it. He couldn't believe it, but he played it low, and just kind of like, "Yeah, that's a pretty good song, guys." For whatever reason, but he was very excited about hearing the song and everything, but he didn't want to be too excited about it. So how fun to be able to be at a rehearsal of Van Halen and get to hear a song for the first time.
It's a real kind of slow burn, almost not funky groove, but it just kind of moves along slowly, but really in a cool way.
It's gritty. It's the haunting kind of Michael Anthony background with the ooze in there. Yep. Good stuff.
I love the intro to that one too. I love a lot of the intros on here.
Yeah.
They're just so uniquely cool among themselves. That's the thing about this album, I think, is that cohesively you get the sound, but individual songs are very individual. It doesn't sound like one song bled into the other, like with the arrangement and the whole sound. They're very unique among themselves, and I so appreciate that in this album. Not to diss the Boston thing, but I mean, a lot of those sound very similar. A couple of those almost back to back, I think. Like the sound was like almost identical, and it wasn't enough of a change for me in my brain to go, this is a different song. This is a very different song, which is very much so, I think, on this album they are.
And we didn't talk about Alex, but a lot of his drum fills and everything. And even this, you're talking about the intro of this with the guitar, when he kicks in with those drums, very, very distinct sound. He's all over the place drumming. If you listen to his isolated tracks, the fills that he gets in there, he squeezes into places. It's really cool.
It's interesting that all of the songs on the album, I guess it's not interesting. It's what it is. The guitar really is the melody to the song too. Mm-hmm. And the guitar kind of leads you through every song. Yeah. I'm not explaining it in the best.
No, I know what you're saying. And that's part of what I was saying, where you're going right into a guitar solo, and it's like recorded all at one time. It's not like we recorded the rhythm and then we added a solo and did this here. No, it was just straight through.
And I think this is why for me this album sounds so different than their later stuff, because they probably did do a lot more of the overdub. Like, let's stop and get this part in here. A lot of songs are crafted now. It's like bits and pieces all kind of Frankenstein together.
Right.
You're especially with the Sammy Hagar era is what you're referring to, for sure. Yeah.
He was a very different player by then. He was getting more into rhythm guitar playing and so
and the technology to do that too.
Right.
I'm sure it's a lot easier to do.
Yeah.
Even when Sammy was singing with them.
Well, and then he had Sammy to be part of the band too. Yeah. I mean, Sammy is a proficient guitarist as well. Not that he was playing all the time, but he did play a bit with Eddie too. So
he only played on like maybe one or two songs on the albums.
Oh, really?
He played live. Yeah, he would do some stuff.
Seeing.
But as
like
far
Live
as
Without a Net, I see him playing a few songs on there.
Right.
While Eddie's playing keyboard, because somebody needed to play guitar.
Yeah, and did a great job on that. Yeah. It's not like, ooh, man, I wish Eddie was playing. He was like, he can hold his play own. Too. Yeah,
he had a band before Van Halen, so
he did.
Yeah. All right, it's time to give our personal rating of this album from 0 to 10, with 10 being leave it on repeat because I could listen to this all day. Would you drop the needle on this album again, Lance?
100%.
That's an easy call, right?
I'll give it a 10. I mean, there isn't anything else out there as far as a debut album that is as cool as Van Halen. There's stuff that I really like a lot that sold well, but there's no other album that really sounds the way their debut did.
Brian,
I'm hanging 10 on this one.
I feel a lot of pressure to go 10. I always want some room for, hey, what if we cover an album later?
Something's got to set the standard, Dave.
Well, you know what? You don't have to compare it with other bands.
No.
You're comparing to this. I mean, is this, like you said, would you drop the needle on this album again?
Well, of course I'd drop the needle on this album again. I do it quite often, actually. But this is a 10 for me, especially getting that experience as a kid, just being completely blown away, almost literally, from the sound that just came out of speakers for the first time.
What is this?
Yeah, it was fantastic. All right, guys, it's time for Remember When. This is a segment where I ask Brian and Lance their thoughts about something we grew up with but may no longer be around today. Today's item for discussion.
I got my thinking toque on.
You got your thinking toque? Oh, hey, there's another subject for another time. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an article of clothing, so acid wash jeans.
Oh.
What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Ick.
Did you have a pair?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I'd bring a pair back. I mean,
no,
I know
there's a lot of stuff from the 80s I wouldn't bring back.
I look at what my kids, they're wearing. It's like, whoa, where have I seen this before? But acid wash? Yeah, I'm sure I had more than one pair, but
I don't think I owned a pair.
Cool. Good for you, Brian.
You were cooler than
I remember buying a pair of 501s that were like a light blue.
Like the stonewashed?
Kind of. Maybe they were
stonewashed. Like the really light blue?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's with stonewashed.
And that was kind of the first ones that, I think they came out with black and white.
Yep.
And then they came out with that stonewashed.
Mm-hmm. Acid wash was after that, I think.
Yeah, so that was like the closest you could get to buying a pair of jeans that looked worn kind of already.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But not like a pair of worn 501s. So, but yeah, I don't think I ever had the acid washed.
I had a pair too. I made sure to roll them up at the bottom as well.
You did. Mm-hmm. I think there's a painting of you wearing them.
There is. That's right.
They're
had a photo
immortalized in a painting.
Yes,
yes.
I forgot that I had those on.
Yep.
When we took a photo, during college, we kind of had a little kind of fun photo shoot of guys hanging around by a car in downtown.
Kind of the 501 blues commercial look.
Totally a 90s
rusty
thing to
beater
do.
car. And I think there's a number of us wearing acid wash jeans. Or maybe it's just me.
I think it's just
We're all wearing jeans.
We're all wearing jeans, definitely, because that was kind of what we were going for.
Yes. So did we start the kind of ripped clothing trend too with those? I mean, a lot of those started burning through just because it's bleach that's the activator for a lot of those.
I don't know.
Bleach jeans.
I never did have any.
I think we started the ripped clothing trend back.
I
in
remember
the 80s
I was always happy when I finally started to wear through my knees. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
As opposed to me when I had, just a few years earlier, when I was in my single digits, maybe 10, I'd go through those jeans. The
cords.
I had cords too because I couldn't wear jeans to school. But you'd have the holes, and guess what? Mom would patch them.
Oh,
and how uncool that was.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hopefully it was like a wow patcher. Have a nice day or something.
No,
like that.
It was a denim patch that didn't match the jeans at all.
Boy.
Just totally.
That's too bad.
Bad stuff.
Oh, nerd alert. Yikes.
There's probably some traumatized kid that had that happen back in the 70s that started the trend of, I'm just going to leave these holes here.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
To our growing audience, we're going to try to double it. I think last time we had 2, so we're going to go for 4.
Yes.
4 of you out there.
Woo.
Thanks so much for checking out our podcast. In our next episode, we're going to be talking about another favorite topic, concerts.
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense for a few music heads here to be talking about concerts. So maybe we'll talk about some of our favorite and not so favorite shows we've seen over the years and why we really dig live music.
Yes.
If you missed our last episode, we talked about Brian's first album, which was Freeze Frame by the Jay Giles Band, which actually inspired me to go and pick up a Jay Giles and Peter Wolf solo album.
Nice.
So way to go, Brian. Thanks for buying Jay Giles right out of the chute.
I didn't know I could inspire people 40 years later.
That is impressive, yeah. So if you haven't heard that album or our podcast about Freeze Frame, take time and go back and check it out.
If you get a chance, leave us a review of the show on your favorite podcast listening app. Give us the good, the bad, and the ugly. Most of us can take it. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at When Records Ruled. Check out our Spotify playlist where you can find all the albums we've discussed in this podcast and ones in the past. And remember, we're not professional music critics. We're just 3 guys who like talking music.
Yes, we do. Thanks for listening, everyone. Until next time, drop that needle and keep those records spinning.
See ya.
Sayonara.